Hello, my fellow star seeds. It's Lotus Globe, and I'm back. It's been well over a year, my goodness, since I made a video blog on my astrology channel here. And that's because I've been going through a lot of serious evolutionary changes in my life that have definitely shifted the framework for my astrology readings to its final stage. And now I'm happy to announce that in this video, I'm going to be laying down the groundwork for how I'm going to be conducting readings from now on. So, this book right here laid out the model for me beautifully. There's a section in this book that talks all about mythic intelligence. So, in the 10 years, well, 11 years to be accurate, that I've studied astrology, I've always known that astrology is essentially an interpretation of the inner myth that happens within one's subjective experience of their own psychology. And basically, astrology helps to provide that internal networking, which is so necessary to actually give astrology a practical grounding in reality. Yeah, because it's obviously very, very easy, for me anyways, to dive real deep and to really get into the archetypal expressions of each of the 12 zodiac signs and just really lose sight of reality, because, of course, it's obviously important to know like how these supposedly imaginary beings that we see in each of the 12 signs can be manifested in a manner that aligns with one's personal values. And in doing that, it helps one to adjust and augment or modify wherever necessary, or loosen up any types of behavioral tendencies that one has that can help one get a better sense of balance in knowing what their path is in life. I just want to quickly, my apologies, I wanted to silence my phone here. All right. So yeah, sorry about that. And so, yeah, there's going to be two other components that I'm going to be applying to my astrology readings. So they are synchronicity and alchemy. Okay, so what is synchronicity? Well, if you understand and have read Carl Jung, you know that synchronicity is when one experiences a meaningful coincidence or a meaningful happening in one's life based off of a certain memory that focuses on a certain object or person or place, and one then just suddenly like looks out of the corner of their eye and actually sees that very, very thing that they were just imagining at that moment. So let's take a good example of somebody who is thinking of somebody who's thinking of a like a certain smell for a sorry, for a perfume. I just had supper. And they're trying to put their finger on like what the fragrance is, and they they know, um, but they can only go off of their smell memory, and they recall it being something that like an ex-girlfriend had, that this guy wants to then um, like use as a reference point to recreate in his aromatherapy laboratory. Okay, so all of a sudden he'll see a lily, for example. So then he'll have that aha moment. He'll go over, he'll take a whiff of it, and he'll be like, "Oh yes, that's exactly what what I remember that was." And then it'll lead to more details like the brand of the perfume or cologne, like Maison Saint Louis, which happens to have like lily and like sandalwood mixed in with it. So that's what I'm talking about. It's like it can be a certain smell, a certain sight, or a feeling, and then you find whatever it is in your external reality that matches up with that. So that's what Carl Jung was getting at, and he basically called synchronicity a meaningful coincidence. But synchronicity really, um, actually, it has its roots in DNA. So think about the way that time travel works. It's it's a helix pattern. So you have the two nodes, which would be like past and future, and then the helix line, um, the peak that it rides, that would be considered as the present. Everything that's happening in between. So, um, so DNA is basically the building blocks for all life. But, since we're focusing on human life, it's also got a lot to do with genetics. It's got to do with traits that have been passed on from your parents, your ancestors. So, the questions that come up for me are questions like, what sorts of experiences that have imprinted me do I find valuable? Which things do I want to change? Things that may have traumatized me. What things do I want to expand and augment? So, based on understanding all of that, then alchemy, which would be the next key tool that's used in here, will then help to understand how the material from one story can be placed in the context of each of the five elements: air, water, fire, earth, and ether, or spirit. And of course, astrology is the map, of course, for providing the terrain in which these elements can be worked with as the prima materia for your reality. Yeah? Prima materia is also a term that Jung coined, but it basically the same thing as alchemy. Yeah? as DNA, yeah? So, you change your DNA programming, you can change your reality using the building blocks found in the elements. And when you look at astrology, now in the cycle of the 12 signs, there you split them down into 3 sets of 4. So first 4 signs have an element that corresponds to a different mode. So just an example, the first 4 signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, those signs are fire, earth, air, water. Those are the first 4 signs that make up your personality, based on the mode in which the element is in with each of those signs. So you have the first sign, Aries, is cardinal. So that's basically saying that if you think about the image that Aries portrays, it's like the spark, the initial spark of consciousness that emerged from the Big Bang, or whatever you want to call it. It's like the first sign of life, as this spark of creative energy that needs to have movement and have a very, very tangible existence to ground itself in. So that's where we go to the next sign, Taurus, which is an earth sign. And I'm a Taurus, obviously. May 6th is my birthday. So this is easy for me. Taurus is a sign that deals with the physical body, the 5 senses, and knowing how to find one's personal sense of pleasure and sensation in learning to grasp the real world. It's like, when babies first grow up, they learn through touch. They learn through, oral pleasure, just like biting or sucking on things, or just touching, holding something in one's hands. And those types of things are important when it comes to understanding how to learn how to function in your physical body, and to discover what your personal values are in being in this particular body. So then once you start to get a good feel for how your body moves and feels and navigates the 3D earthly realm of existence, you then have Gemini, and that's the first air sign, and it's also the first mutable sign. So I just went through cardinal and fixed. So now the image for Gemini would be air just swirling around in all directions, like wind blowing, and moving information around, the way that bees move from one flower to the next to spread its DNA information for pollination. And I guess before then I get to the next water sign, before I get to the first water sign, I should just outline what cardinal, fixed, and mutable mean? Cardinal, if you think about it, it means action. Just like starting out, being a self-starter. Fixed would be very, very solid and maintaining a very, very comfortable position wherever you are. Mutable would basically be very, very changeable. Whereas, fixed, you have, a certain adamant nature about something. Then mutable is basically just being flexible in terms of understanding how the function of that particular element can have flexibility. And that's going to be something for a whole different conversation. Although, I might talk about it in this video. I don't know. I'll have to see what kind of time I have. Now, we move through the first three signs and the first three modes of each element. But now there's, of course, the first water sign, and that's Cancer. And that's a cardinal sign, just like Aries was a cardinal sign. So water, of course, is the realm of emotions. If you think about how fire is about creativity, earth is about practicality, air would be about information, learning, and communicating. Then water is about, healing or nurturing. And it's also the element that looks over the cycles of death and rebirth. And it's the element in which one can get directly in touch with the spiritual side of life. So the first water sign, Cancer, is the sign that helps to provide a rhythm for the information that moves around in Gemini. Because without an emotional rhythm, whatever thoughts you have, can just easily, bounce right at you very chaotically, just like meteors from out of nowhere or asteroids. And it's easy to get very, very lost in all the details of a certain subject. So when you think about finding a rhythm and a reason for all this information, then you look to the first water sign. And Cancer, of course, is the sign that rules over home and domestication and how you nurture yourself and who your mother figures were. Cancer, of course, is the mother. And the opposite sign, Capricorn, would be the father, although that applies to Leo as well. Just had to throw that in there. So when you look at those four elements right there, and then you think of the fifth element, which is spirit, that's the alchemy process that binds together each of those elements. So during the course of reading a chart, I'm going to be looking at how alchemy and synchronicity can work their magic in helping one to achieve their highest potential in life. So the way that I do it, the way that I start a reading, most people would basically start out with your sun sign. Now, I understand most people, when they're coming to get a reading from me, they're going to have all their birth information, their like the time of day they were born, if that's possible. Some people don't remember their birth time, but they'll know, the month and day and year that they were born, city and state. They'll know all that information. And at most, they'll obviously know what sign they were based on the day they were born. But then they're going to want to know, like, what it all means. So if someone was born on July 24th, that person will likely know that they're a Leo. Well, here's the thing. I don't start out with people's sun signs because I think it's a bit backwards to do that. And I say that, with having had experience knowing people who got a little bit too above themselves because they thought that they knew everything about themselves just because they knew their sun sign. Well, I thought I knew everything about myself being a Taurus, and then I found myself just getting into places which I felt like took me further and further away from my destiny, and what I really, really want most in life. So that's why I start out with a person's moon sign. Now, the moon sign is your emotions, your instincts, your unique imprint from the time you were born. And it's that imprint that you rely on to help you to navigate the matrix of real life. This holographic universe that is reality. And essentially that's what astrology is at heart, is that it's a science that helps to understand the holographic fabric of reality in order to tilt the pixels of one's screen of their worldview so that they can see life from a different angle, from a different dimension. And the moon is really what you need to know to get you started, to get you driving forward. And again, referring back to Antero Ali here, the moon is referred to as your responsive force. So he refers to the planets as forces, not planets, which does make sense when it comes to understanding how each of the planets are like storehouses of energy, and knowing how this energy manifests itself through each of the signs, which he refers to as styles. So like your personal style as governed by each force will manifest itself in a certain state. And the state, of course, applying to each of the 12 houses. But just not get ahead of myself here. I just want to get back to talking about the moon. So the moon, as is referred to here, is the responsive force. It's our daily emotional reactions and source of satisfaction, nourishment, and well-being. Its potential is your soul consciousness. And I want to believe that we're all at a point in our evolution where we're all doing soul work. We're trying to find our soul mate. We're trying to find work that feeds our soul. I mean, I know that's what astrology does for me. And I can definitely get into the details of that in my chart at another time. But your moon is really what drives you forward. It's what motivates you. So, for example, my moon sign is an Aries. Now, it only makes sense to me that my moon sign is immediately more important than my sun sign, which is Taurus, because Aries comes before Taurus, if that makes sense now when you think about it, when I place it in that context. So it means for me, I'm definitely one that needs to really put some action into my environment, to be a leader, to initiate things, to enterprise things, and come up with new ideas to make a business succeed. And it's definitely quite a hot sign after all. Aries is ruled normally by Mars, so in the moon, it's Aries is a very primitive, very animalistic sign. So I definitely work from the more animalistic side of my brain, my nature. It's not to say that I've lost sight of my humanity. It just means that there's definitely more of a survivalist perspective on life, and just a need to really be seen and to be accepted and to be appreciated for the work that I put into my astrology business. So it's also a sign that gets very easily stressed out too. It's why I usually have to work out at the gym, or do Tai Chi, or do like Montauk Chia's inner smile, so that I'm constantly helping to cool down any excess heat. Aries, can definitely create a lot of heat in the furnace, to say the least. So that's the moon sign right there. Then I also talk about the moon's nodes. Okay, so the nodes would be, so they're basically, if you can see right here, those are the signs, the glyphs right there. So if you've ever seen those, you'll know that your north node focuses on your destiny. Your south node focuses on karma. There's a myth about this dragon, which I'll get into some other time. I don't want to take too long on this introduction video, but understanding your moon's nodes helps you to know the path that you are going to be taking in life based on what your instincts tell you. So it's first about understanding what lessons you've had to learn in life. So like my south node is in Scorpio, and for that placement, it means the karma that I've carried in my life is to really understand the things that happen under the surface of life, because I don't take anything at face value. I have to understand the deeper meaning and have a direct emotional experience from it that is genuine and authentic, which is why I'm so much against religion, Orthodox religion, because it's trying to limit the psychological transformation that can happen through spiritual experience through the preaching of some doctrine that has been generally agreed upon by some body of people who claim that they have some absolute knowledge about God or the universe or anything that exists in the realm of the invisible. And that's just wrong. I think that everybody is God. God is here. It's not some white-haired, misanthropist up in the sky that watches the fall of every sparrow that falls, that keeps tally of every sparrow that falls. I'm quoting Carl Sagan, by the way. No, it's not. it's something far more unknowable and undefinable, and something that we can really only experience intuitively. So that's where how my south node plays into this. My north node, ironically, is in Taurus. So that's where my destiny is to experience a sense of tangible values that bring the highest pleasure and ecstasy in my life, and really help me to feel in the now in this lifetime. So yeah, so that's my north node right there as well. And if you're gonna do your chart after this, and you read up on your nodes, obviously just apply everything I've said about the nodes to the signs that they're in, and that way you'll know, and you'll be able to tie that in with your moon sign, so as to know like the path of destiny that you are taking. Then there's the ascendant, and the ascendant, now that's the sign that rules over your first house. Now, there are 12 houses in your chart. Each one of them has to deal with a different state of existence in your life. So, so the first house is your state of self. That's what defines you, your physical body. Now, if you want me to give you an example of opposites, as far as like how different houses relate, or how they indicate like different polarities, because I know that a single house by itself can't really explain the whole of your chart. It's better to just look at like how certain houses relate. So I'm going to go over the first house and the 8th house, because they're both houses that are ruled by signs that are normally ruled by Mars. And yeah, actually, I think I'm going to bring in the 7th house too and talk about that. So, so you have your first house. Actually, no, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually talk about the 4 cardinal points in the chart. So the 4 primary houses, which are really the foundation to then understanding the rest of the houses. So your first house is what your rising sign, your ascendant, rules. So your first house has to deal with your overall approach to the world, personal and self-image, your act or style of presentation, your physical body, and your 5 senses. Okay, so my ascendant is Virgo. So basically that means my approach to the world is very much logical. I need to understand the details of everything that I study. I can't really deal with vague abstractions, which is actually why I'm usually pretty cynical about a lot of things of a religious or spiritual nature, because like a lot of people just give a lot of vague descriptions about something like the chakra system, for example. So for me, as long as I get the details about something that I'm studying, I feel very comfortable. I feel like I have a sense of knowing and understanding, and I'll be able to explain things then based on the information that I had in a way that is malleable for someone to chew on and to digest easily. So, of course, naturally, if someone doesn't get something about astrology, please don't think that I'm a bad astrologer. I'm constantly learning, distilling, getting to the essence of what I really want to say, without overwhelming people with any mystical abstractions, in any way. Yeah? So that's how I describe my first house, and it's an Earth sign. So